experience with certain technology. So I can start sharing my screen here. And hopefully we're good to go now. Anna, do you see that?
Yeah, that looks good.
Awesome. Thank you for your patience. So as Anna introduced me, I'm Willie. I'm the coordinator and acting manager for Glean SLO right now. And so I can give you a basic rundown of what we do and why we do it. So if you're not familiar, gleaning traditionally has been the act of collecting excess and allocating that to those with less means. So it's always really been a sort of welfare system. In ancient times, it was more you leave the edge of your field so that folks can come pick those edges or anything left in the field. These days, it's a little different. There's a lot more to the idea of gleaning. For us, it's really any collecting of excess produce so that we can share that with those in need. And so this all really starts with the problem of food waste. According to the FDA, it's about 30 to 40% of all food produced in the US is wasted or uneaten, really. And one 2014 study found that Americans throw away 38 million tons of food each year. And to give you a sort of visual, that's the equivalent of one college football stadium per day. Also, food waste is one of the largest components of our US landfills. And this waste can occur at multiple points on the supply chain. So for example, the National Resource Defense Council, they have a kind of approximate breakdown for where this waste is occurring. They say about 16% of this happens on the farm where the food is growing. 2% is at the manufacturing stage for if the food is being processed. 39% of that happens at food businesses, and then 43% of that is household food waste. So there's quite a bit of work to be done by us consumers. In terms of greenhouse gases, you can kind of think about it this way. If food waste were a country, it's estimated that it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. And as logic follows, that also means a lot of water waste. We use a lot of water irrigating our crops, and when that goes to waste, so does the water we use to irrigate it. And so we can focus a little bit locally here. Here in SLO County, we grow enough produce to feed each person who lives here 7.5 pounds of fresh produce per day. And we have a year-round growing season, so we can grow basically anything you can think of. We have a huge variety of produce offered to us here. But in 2009, our estimate was 1 in 6 people in our county is food insecure. And nationally, that's about 41 million people. And if you're not familiar with the term food insecurity, as opposed to the term hunger, it's the idea that a person might not know where their next meal is coming from. And Food Forward, another gleaning group out of California, they have a great definition, which is it's a lack of access to enough good, healthy, and culturally appropriate food. And so what can we do? And that's where Glean SLO comes in. And so we're here to facilitate making use of this excess food and connecting that with people in need. And that happens through the SLO Food Bank and also its many partners throughout the county. So when I say these like agencies or these partners, I'm talking about churches or pantries, shelters who prepare meals for homeless folk. And so to give you an idea of kind of what this looks like on the ground, one of the places that we glean is commercial farms. So places like this photo was taken at Tally Farms. They have been a big donor for a long time. And this is just one of our group gleans out there with a group from Mind Body. And this is about, I think we do about 200 of these farm gleans per year on average in the last couple of years. But it is the vast majority of the weight we pull in comes from these farms. They obviously can produce a lot more than, say, a backyard. But we also do these small scale harvests. So you're probably familiar with how many fruit trees you'll see around SLO or South County or North County. There's tons around here, especially citrus, stone fruit. We're really busy with stone fruit right now. So in any given year, we're also doing about 200 of these harvests, obviously pulling in less weight through those harvests, but we spend about the same amount of time working with homeowners as we do with farmers. And let's see. And so it might be like pretty obvious why a homeowner would donate. There's a big feel-good factor. You can connect with your community, you can give back, but for large-scale donors, I think the question of why is pretty important. And so, let's see. Sometimes it's simply just extra. We have, like, for example, that photo at Tally Farms, you know, they overplant when they run their CSA. They might have an extra field and they had already filled all their boxes. Other times, sometimes crops aren't commercially viable, so maybe the market price dropped. It might not be worth their money to pay labor to harvest something for such a small cost to the consumer. They also might be cosmetically defective, so when bell peppers grow and they have all these bumps and they look super strange, but they're really just the same thing. They look a little different. They'll probably call us to harvest those peppers as well. Another place that we do a sort of gleaning is at local farmers markets. So this is a photo from our Thursday evening collection, a few of our folks who go and pick up at the end of the Thursday market. And we do 4 of those throughout the county. So we're at the Thursday SLO Farmers Market, we're at the Templeton Saturday Farmers Market, the SLO Saturday Farmers Market, as well as the Morro Bay Thursday Farmers Market. And we just have teams who go to these and collect the excess at the end of the market from farmers who maybe don't imagine that the produce that they have left will make it till their next opportunity to sell that. We also, under normal circumstances, obviously everything is quite different right now. We host fruit drives with local schools, so this is kind of an educational experience for kids. So we can educate students on food waste and gleaning practices, and then we can task them with collecting fruit from their local neighborhoods and donating that to the food bank. So if you're wondering about what sort of policies are in place, I wouldn't say there's anything too extreme right now, but there are some in existence in terms of encouraging donation of excess food and minimizing waste. The Good Samaritan Act is an act that is meant to incentivize donations by removing any liability that a donor has when they donate any sort of food crop. So Jim, this is Farmer Jim from Los Osos, if he donates that bunch of carrots and something happens with them, they rot, maybe somebody got sick and they think it might be the carrots, he's not liable for, he doesn't have any liability with that donation because he made that in good faith. There is also, let's see, there's a food waste ban, so businesses can't create any more than 8 cubic yards of organic waste per week. And the goal for 2020 this year, which was set in 2014, was that we would minimize our food waste and reduce the organic waste in landfills by 50%. And if that is not met, I suppose they're supposed to create more stringent bans on organic waste with businesses. And so this is where all the distribution magic happens for our program. And so Glean SLO is a program of the SLO Food Bank. And this is the warehouse, the food bank warehouse, where we can store all the crops that we harvest. We have, you'll see in the back, there's a huge cooler, tons of space for dry goods, and tons of volunteers you see here that can help out with packaging whatever we bring in to go out to people who need it. And so the food bank distributes about 3 million pounds of food per year, 50% of which is fresh produce. And about 18% of that produce is sourced locally by us at Glean SLO. And there's a variety of ways that that food goes out to people. We have direct distributions to folks where we can set up and hand out bags of dry goods and fresh produce. There's also distribution to agencies, like I mentioned before, the churches, pantries, shelters. And we also have programs like children's and seniors farmers markets, where we can set up and have a sort of mock farmers market for the kids who can go through and pay with fake money and get their bag of produce to take home. So it's kind of another educational experience. Agencies are also able to order food through the food bank at a highly reduced cost. So I think it's less than $1 per pound for dry goods, and then all the produce is free. And so here's just kind of a summary of our impact, what we do, reducing food waste, water waste, waste of any sort of labor, energy put into that, connecting that fresh local produce to those who don't normally have access to that, helping farmers and homeowners make use of their excess produce and providing tax breaks to growers. We are also connecting volunteers and growers with others in the community and educating volunteers on the local food system, which for me is really rewarding and something we don't talk about all that often when we talk about our goals, is how cool it is to see somebody realize how kohlrabi grows or how asparagus grows, or to see how much abundance is in their area and how we can make use of that. And so here's kind of a breakdown of over the years. We've really grown quite a bit. 2013 was the year that we joined the food bank as a program of the food bank, so we could definitely store a lot more food and distribute that through the food bank. You'll see the big jump in numbers there. And so far, we're almost to 2 million pounds. So this is our 10th birthday, and doesn't seem like we'll make it quite this year, but maybe next year. And if you're curious, this is a resource that I would recommend to anybody who's interested in seeing like what sort of gleaning resources exist outside of SLO County. There's quite a few in California and the West Coast, but this is a pretty comprehensive database of a bunch of different gleaning operations that operate in vastly different ways. So kind of a fun research resource. And for anybody hoping to get in on gleaning action, or if you know a grower or have a fruit tree, you can always find us at our website at gleanslo.org. And same for the food bank if you're interested in what they do and how they interact with us, slofoodbank.org. And I believe that's it. So I can open up for questions at this point.
Great. Thank you so much, Willie. That was awesome. Yeah, we've got one question in the chat box. If anyone else has questions that you would like to unmute yourself and just ask, you're welcome to do that as well. The first question that we had was, are you still running the farmers markets this summer?
Yeah, so we are. I think all farmers markets are a go except for the Thursday, the downtown SLO Thursday. So we are obviously not operating there, but we took a break for about a month and kind of reassessed safety and how we could operate under COVID, and we're back at it. So
awesome. And then is the food that you get at the farmers markets, do you buy that from the farmers, or is that
no? So that's like our group of folks. They show up about 10 minutes, or sorry, about an hour before the end of the market. They distribute crates so that farmers can donate anything that they don't have a use for at that moment at the very end of the market. So we're not infringing upon their, what they could potentially sell.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And then another one was, are there age or physical requirements to volunteer?
No, many of our harvests are limited to teens and adults, I should say. Like, for instance, commercial farms, a lot of times we try to limit that to adult folks. Anything that we're using, maybe more dangerous equipment, probably won't have kids. But actually, there is someone on this call who runs a local farm, and they are super kid-friendly. They are a farm that grows everything to be donated to those in need. It's called First Fruits Farm, and they have tons of opportunities through the summer that we list on our harvest calendar, so all ages can go there.
Awesome. And then, does the organization host any community cook-off events using Gleaning or Glean products?
We haven't, but that sounds awesome. I would love to do that.
All right. And then, are you operating the mock markets for the kids right now?
No, we haven't been. That program is put on pause right now with kids being out of school. Time will tell how soon we get back to that once kids are in school. I'm not sure. Everything's really wacky right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Constantly changing. All right. And then let's see. What do you find most rewarding about gleaning?
I think, yeah, kind of what I spoke to a little bit ago about how cool it is to connect people with their local food system, because I had that experience personally coming to the West Coast and becoming connected with food, this thing that you engage with every day, and seeing how it's grown, how it's produced. And, we live in an area of such abundance. So yeah, it's really cool. And it happens all the time where you have somebody at harvest and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is here. Like, I had no idea these orchards were like right off the 101, and I didn't even know this is how this grew. And that is super cool to see people like expand their understanding of the food system here.
Totally. And how many people do you think that food goes to? I don't know if you already mentioned that, but how many people?
Oh, that we serve at the food bank.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I should have written that number down. I always have trouble holding on to that number, but I'm sure it's somewhere on the food bank website.
Okay, we have that link on there, so we can check it after.
Cool. Awesome.
And then let's see. Another one was, does the program run 12 months of the year?
Yeah. So we don't really even have a slow season, actually. I feel like it's funny to talk to gleaning groups from other parts of the country, because some of them operate just during like the growing season that is the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually are arguably busier in the winter because so many people have citrus trees here in SLO. So it just kind of ebbs and flows throughout the year.
Okay. Gotcha. So all year long.
Yeah.
And then, are there still volunteer opportunities during COVID?
Definitely. Yeah. So we're back in basically full operation. We definitely have new safety protocol, and, keeping that distance. So, but we're fully up and running, and you can see all of our harvests on our harvest calendar at our website.
Okay. Great. And then, what produce do you enjoy gleaning the most?
Nothing repeatedly. That's my answer. I think anybody who volunteers with SNF will realize how desperate they are to harvest a row crop when they've been harvesting oranges for 3 months.
Mm.
So yeah, any sort of variety is great.
Is there a certain, like, what crops do you notice that you end up gleaning the most? Or I mean, I'm sure it's seasonal, but
Yeah.
overall, what do you think?
So, like I said, citrus is huge. Everybody and their mom has a lemon tree. And then let's see what other big crops. Stone fruit is really big for us. So another big backyard harvest is plums. We get like 10 calls a week during stone fruit season from homeowners. And yeah, less row crops right now. So it's kind of interesting during shelter at home. A lot of people have subscribed to CSAs. And so some of the donors we usually work with, like Tally, what I was told, they said their CSA program had tripled. And so they had no extras for us, which was like a great problem, but it's really interesting to have that kind of flipped on its head. And so a lot of the mid-sized growers that we usually work with are like swamped, and it's totally a great problem. But we're working a lot more with backyard homeowners right now.
Gotcha. All right. And then one question was about if they have produce, is it better to take it directly to the food bank or to call you guys at Glean SLO?
I think anything that minimizes, like, allows us to spread our energy. Like, if you're able, I think we always encourage people, if they can, to self-harvest and donate. And I'm always happy to facilitate where they should take that or any sort of guidance they need in the harvesting or donation process. And ultimately saving our volunteer resources for really large harvests where we really need the person power.
So take it to the food bank if possible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Got some compliments on there. Fabulous job. And then do you glean walnuts directly from the tree or from the ground?
We actually don't harvest walnuts. So there's a few things we don't harvest, which are nuts, just because they require processing. Olives also require processing. And we recently stopped doing loquats. Those were really hard to distribute and really hard to pick. But I believe that's it. We might have somebody here who could chime in if they remember anything else. But
cool. And then, is there a difference between organic and non-organic harvesting?
No, we do not discriminate. We harvest what is offered to us. That is also, good quality.
Mm-hmm. And do you have to like label it differently when you're giving it to the food bank, or does it all just kind of go into the same?
Yeah, no. So that all goes. Typically, most harvests will go straight to the warehouse, where they are stored with a multitude of other things that may or may not have come from us.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned that goal, the 2020 goal about reducing organic waste by 50%. Can you go into that a little bit more, or what that really?
That was something I saw about California. California's goal for waste reduction in landfills, which I'm actually super curious to look into now that everything is turned upside down. I don't know if that will have changed at all, but.
Cool. And then another thing is you mentioned that some agencies buy food from the food bank. What type of agencies or organizations typically purchase from the food bank?
Yeah, so there's plenty of pantries. There are shelters. There's like the Salvation Army, 40 Prado, those types of things. So normally they could come and actually like shop at the food bank warehouse and see what is available and pick things out that way. Now they have to place orders online so that they can come and pick up that stuff that's already prepared for them.
Okay.
Just to minimize contact.
Yeah, makes sense. Another question just came in. How does it work with large fruit and vegetables like watermelons? Or how is that?
Yeah, I mean, we still glean them. They're maybe trickier to distribute because a lot of the produce we'll try to send out in produce bags to direct distributions to people. And so obviously something like a watermelon is like a little harder to do. So you might try to find an agency that can distribute directly to individuals what they want, so they could like choose if they want this watermelon. Sometimes we have to get creative about how to send it to people who can use it.
And so the type of volunteer positions that you offer, is there a broad range of different volunteer opportunities with Glean?
It's mostly gleaners, like folks who can actually just be on the ground picking fruit, picking veggies. We do also have those farmers market leaders, as I mentioned, which is super important. And then we have harvest leaders. So those are volunteers that are specifically trained so that they can lead other volunteers in small harvests. So a lot of times a backyard harvest, I would try to have a harvest leader lead those so that any paid staff can kind of spread their energy elsewhere.
Gotcha. Cool. And then I've got one last question is, so I've heard that one good way to help reduce food waste is if you're at a grocery store or somewhere you're buying produce, to buy the bruised, kind of the ugly bruised produce, because that that typically ends up getting, thrown away. So do you have other recommendations for people, for all of us, to help reduce our food waste, or like little tips or tricks like that?
Interesting. I feel like I'm not so much on the end of like reducing home food waste. I have no trouble doing that, living with so many people. So I don't have to strategize too hard, but yeah, I'd have to think on it more. I'm sure there's tons of people talking about it.
Yeah. But you definitely would encourage buying the bruised, ugly produce.
Totally. I'm all about that. And I also, I've had this idea for a campaign for a long time of like, don't buy lemons, because you can like, if you just walk around your neighborhood, you're going to find a neighbor of yours that has a lemon tree and you can totally knock on their door. I always encourage that sort of thing of just like, maybe minimize demand and show that we can like be connected to our neighbors and share food.
I like that. You should start that campaign. Does anyone else have any questions? Welcome to type them in the chat box, or like I said, you can unmute yourself if you like. Yeah, Mary just put a good link in here as well to learn about the different requirements that are changing now for reducing food waste at the landfill if you're interested. Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Willie, that was awesome. I'm very stoked to learn more about gleaning. Hopefully you all are as well. And if you want to get involved with Glean SLO, you're welcome to volunteer with them, go onto their website, and follow EcoSLO for more Green Weeks events. So thanks everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Have a good evening.